Alex, what is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
Do so much work, it would be unreasonable for you not to be successful. Does demanding that it should be fair make you stronger? Does saying that that person started further ahead of you in any way benefit you? No, because your actions are entirely independent from them. I call it the Rocky cutscene, and almost every successful person that I have ever encountered has gone through not a month or a year, but many years of doing work without reward, where they have to do things that other people find boring, and they have to sacrifice things that everyone finds interesting, that most people want to do during that entire season of their life. And they basically sacrifice a season of other things that they would prefer to do stuff that they would not prefer to do because of the one thing they want most. Yeah, people only root for those who don't need to be rooted for. And so I just asked them a couple questions. I was like, who here before pledging started was like, I want to be a part of this house? The guys were like, me. Okay. I'm like, okay, got it. Who here thought it was going to be easy? Who here thought it would be hard? They raised their hands. I'm like, guys, this is what hard feels like. And all of a sudden there's just like this big exhale in the room. They're like, expectations get reset. This is normal. You wanted this thing. You expected it to be hard. Reality now matches conditions. Sorry, expectations now match conditions. This is what hard feels like. And then all of a sudden it's like they got permission to feel shitty. And by getting permission to feel shitty, they stop feeling it. And the next one is like, what if we confront it and say like, what if they're right? Now what? Because I think a lot of effort gets put into trying to deny reality, right? Like there's this clip that I shared from Tom Bilyeu, and he was talking about how he gets made fun of for his ears being big, right? And I think it's a really good clip because his point that he was making, because it's such a visual, easy example for people to understand. He's like, is that it's true. I do have big ears. And shoot, I can't remember who it was from. But basically that the best art is art where the artist makes it for themselves, and where you see commercial work is where a bunch of people are trying to make something for an audience. And so they're trying to like rinse and recycle stuff that actually solves no one's problems because no one is actually the audience. Whereas when you make it for yourself, there's thousands of people just like you who will have the same depth of understanding of it, but it feels selfish in the moment to make something for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, you actually make it for others. And so I think when you're on the start path, you can't look at the outcome as the only positive because you will never make it. And so the positive frame that I've always used is, sure, you can have the external ones of like, I like thinking about my first videos had like 13 views. And I'm like, well, if I had an audience of 13 people, I used to spend years pitching, weight loss stuff to rooms of 13, and that was fine. And so thinking about that way was helpful. But the most helpful frame was thinking about who I was becoming as the asset that I was building. So in real time, whenever I finished a long day's work, I was becoming more like the type of person who could work for 5 years without reward. And that would be part of the story I would someday tell. And so some of the biggest reinforcers I've had in my life has been future casting the story that I would tell about the shitty period that I was in. Like I remember when I was sleeping on the floor at my gym because I didn't have enough money for 2 rents. And I was like, I will fucking tell this story. And when I lost everything for the first time, I have the screenshot of the bank account. Like when I show it, people are like, oh, look, there's that thing. But they forget that there was a person who screenshotted it to be like, this won't fucking happen again. And I think having a larger narrative of where you're ultimately going, one, gives you the vision of where you're knows where he's going, but it allows the dragons that you have to slay along the way, the hard things that you have to overcome, to feed into the larger narrative of the story that you'll someday tell. And so like no one ever tells stories about the hero who made it all happen immediately and had no hardships. No one cares, right? Like, okay, you were born to a billionaire. Is there a story there? Not really, but everyone loves the story because we can see ourselves in the character and how much we hope to be like them. And it's the being like them, not the having what they have, that we usually like. And so reframing ourselves as the hero of that narrative in my harder times was what really got me through that, and thinking, I will tell this story someday. I want to give you the single easiest razor to predict my behavior. And I said, whatever will be the most epic story is the thing that I will most likely do. And so that's like if they're like, you have no right to be making content. Are they right? Okay. And
Yeah.
I'm still going to do it anyways. Because the thing is, like, one of the things that I had earlier on in my career was like, I didn't think I was a really good person. Like, I was like, I'm not a good person.
Yeah,
like some people are like, yeah, I just had that, right? And I had a history, whatever. And one of the things that gave me a lot of respite or relief from that kind of thought process was like, that's okay. Because I can still do the things that create success and not deserve it and still get it. And that actually felt very powerful for me. Because it was like, I don't have to deserve the success. I can still just do the stuff that gets it. It's like, you don't have to deserve the girl, but you can still do the things that get her. And do you deserve her when you have her? I don't know. Who knows? I hate the word deserve to begin with, right?
Yes.
But like that concept, because also I could segue into like gratitude around like, if you think you deserve it, then you don't enjoy it. But that has been super powerful for me, which is like, what if they're right? And because a lot of people just they spend so much effort trying to fight the fact that the comments might be right. This might have been a fucking terrible thumbnail.
Yep.
You know what? This might have been a boring video. This post might have been regurgitated content. This post might have been inspired too closely by someone else's post, right? What if they're right? And does it make me a piece of shit? What if it does? And I hear stats like that and I just think, man, it is so easy to win. Like that. I mean, like when I hear that, that's exactly what I think. I'm just like, man, for everyone who's like struggling to win, it's like, most of the pain that people experience is purely in their own minds. And so to your point, I think there's an interesting one between like burnout versus hard. And so like for me, burnout is when I would define it as my output per unit of time decreases. So I can see that that's measurable, right? Now, like I can say like number of pages that I edit or the quality of the content that I create, like my output per time, like the team knows when I'm like 6 hours, 7 hours into recording something, they're like, I literally start like slumping. You're like physically, I just start like slumping and I like my cadence isn't as like, I'm just not as sharp, right? And so oftentimes the most epic story is not the shortest outcome to victory. It's the long saga that results in this big thing later eventually. And I was like, if you ever want to know, if you're like, I'm not sure what he's going to do in this situation, just wonder what the most epic story to tell would be. And that's usually what I will do. And I don't know if that's self-aggrandizing, but that's genuinely my razor for even making the big decisions about, okay, I'm going to sell gym launch. I'm going to marry Layla. I'm going to slum it and live at the gym. I'm going to fly around and do turnarounds. I'm going to start this whole idea of a media company that just gives exclusively. Like, how do I put all these together? It's like, well, what would be the most epic story? And I thought of this idea of just like, when I think about who that story I want to tell is this billionaire that documented the entire thing the whole way and just gave. Because I always thought, I was like, I wish that Elon Musk and Warren Buffett and all these guys would have and Jeff Bezos would have just I would love to have seen 1997 Amazon content. And a lot of the content in terms of it's getting 5 views. It's like, it's okay because when we make it, they're going to come back and watch this. So I don't need them to watch it today. I want them to know that it's here when I do. And I think that got me out of the loop of it. I have to win right now. And then every one of them is just dropping a kernel or a breadcrumb for future me to refer back to. It won't get harder. Like, this is the hardest part. And so if you can just make it through this, everything else is downhill. It's not that the things that the dragons you're going to slay aren't going to get bigger. They are. But you become so much more equipped to slay them back. And you have so many more allies. You have people in the stands cheering for you. You have the audience. You have all of these other things that are behind you. But at the beginning, it's just you with a stick against a bear. And arguably that fight is a harder fight to win than beating a dragon when you have a nuclear bomb and 6 nations behind you. And so it's not even like the size of the hardship, it's just also the resources and how few of them you have, and how so much of the beginning is literally burning the one thing you have, which is time. Because you have no leverage. You don't have the money to pay other people to help you. You don't have the resources to go get someone no one can learn it for you. It's like there's a lot of the things that we care about a lot. Like, no one can work out for you. It doesn't matter how much money you have. No one can learn skills for you. And so in the early days, it feels so painful because you're you look around to see who can help you, and then you're like, fuck, it's me again. And I think getting comfortable with the idea that each of these things, kind of like Slumdog Millionaire, if you've seen that movie where I'll give you the TLDR. He goes through his entire life of randomness, and he gets on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire version in India. And it has 12 questions to make $1 million. And from only 12 random experiences in his life that seemed meaningless at the time, was he able to answer all of the questions and then ultimately win. The skills that you develop along the way, like Steve Jobs learning calligraphy that then became Apple fonts that, transformed how we type. Those early days, that little trench winning in the weeds, oftentimes gives you these huge advantages later on because you have more context than anyone else. And so rather than lament them and hate the fact that you're going through it, remembering that these will be arrows that you put in the quiver that you're going to be using to slay the future bigger dragons. And so expecting it to be easy is what makes it much harder than it ever is. Because in the early days, hard was, ooh, stop. This isn't good. This is a warning sign. This is a red flag. I should slow down, or I should stop, I should pivot. But the more I think about it as a competitive landscape, as I'm clear on what this path is supposed to look like, and these rocks and these dragons are things that I'm going to have to slay along the way to get the princess or get the treasure, I get happier about the harder it is because I know that no one else will follow.
It's a selection effect.
And I think if you can shift from this is hard to no one else will be able to do this, then it flips from being this thing that you're like, oh, poor me, to oh, poor everyone else who's going to have to fucking try.
Yep.
And I think that is so much more motivating as a frame for the exact same circumstance. Like the amount of times when I was on my lonely path where I was too different from the friends that I had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people that I wanted to be friends with. That's when you want people to root for you. That's when you want people to support you. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. And so you always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does. And it's usually a single clap in the auditorium for a very long period of time. It is a slow clap that's just you rooting for you. And that visual, I think, is one that you can kind of take because it is, people struggle to do things alone. And the path of the exceptional person is one of an exception, which means that you are not with other people. And rather than fighting that or bemoaning it, see it as an indicator that you're on the right path. Because if everyone else were cheering you on, then it means you're not in the right place, because it means you're just like everyone else, and that's not where you want to be.
People are afraid of not getting validated, or they're afraid of judgment that they perceive from other people that exist or don't exist in their lives. A lot of people just underestimate the amount of effort it takes to go from good to great. I think the things that were withheld from us are the things that usually we seek the most. I think how many really successful guys have daddy issues, and so for whatever reason they have this second voice that criticizes everything they do that in reality isn't even there. But I would say 99% of the things that I've learned through doing. Like, competitors don't put you out of business, but you obsessing over competitors does. My future self would trade all the money he had to be poor and 20 again. Made me really reanalyze how I saw living life in the moment.
I promise you, every single person who wants to do something with their life and has done something with their life has gone through the exact chapter that you're going through. And it's the lonely chapter. It's the chapter where you don't fit in with your own friends, but you don't have the outcomes yet to fit into a new group of friends. And you're doing this thing, you're consuming content on the internet, you're doing these free tutorials online to try and figure out how to set up a podcast and where do I host this thing? And then you're going through this and you're like, is this even worth it? Because you have no signs of success, right? But if there's anything that you can take away from what we're saying right now, is that the sign of success is the hate that you get along the way. And what you can't do is bend the knee to their hate and fit back into the conformity because it's comfortable and it's warm. Because like in the Matrix, when Trinity opens the door, when Neo's about to go take the red pill and he wants to get out of the car, she says, Neo, you've been down that road and you know exactly where it leads. And I know that's not where you want to be. And then he closes the door. Like right now, this moment that you're going through is Trinity opening the door and being like, you could go back. But then you'd have to remember exactly what the reason was that you decided not to go out to begin with, just because you listen to this podcast and you consume this content, you're like, I can fucking do more than this. Like, because you are starting to live in some of that hell where you look in the mirror and you're like, I can do more. And you start to see the person that you could be. And you're like, this does start to feel like hell.
You can pretty easily tell how successful an entrepreneur is by looking at two elements of time. One is the increments of time they speak in. So if they talk in decades, they talk in multiple decades, they talk in lifetimes, they talk in generations, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be a significantly more successful entrepreneur than the one who talks about next week, next month, and even next quarter. And it's such a small thing, but it's pervasive. Like, you can hear it in conversation, you can immediately know, oh, this guy's only doing this much. Because the only way to do really big things is to think on a much longer time horizon. The second component is how they manage the micro, which is if you look at someone's calendar and how they allocate their most scarce resource, which is time, you can see where they're going to be in 6 or 12 months. So if you look at the calendar as the balance sheet of someone's time asset and how they allocate their time budget, then you will see where they're going to get their returns. And so if we look at a founder and we look at their calendar, we can tell how the company's going. We can usually see how we need to fix it, because fundamentally most entrepreneurs work all the hours of the day. Most of them do, right? And so if they're not making the amount of money that they want to make, it's because they're doing the wrong stuff. And that's usually the biggest issue. And they think they need to work harder, but they've already maxed out their hours, which means fundamentally they're wrong. They're seeing a distorted reality. They think this is going to work, and it is not.
What I'm going to say, and I have very strong views, and they are not common, but I also think that I don't want to live a common life, and so that I cannot have common views, right? So just like as a big disclaimer to that. Like, I've only seen 2 dynamics that work in relationships over like an extended period of time. One is kind of the like we're in it together, and the other is like the, you know, cheerleader and quarterback, like cheering you on. But the thing is like I can speak a lot to the, you know, we're in the game together. For me, I know personally, like I had 2 very long relationships that were cheerleader dynamics. And to me, I could not imagine living life that way, having now lived what I live now. Because like there's a certain amount of shared respect that you never get with somebody who does not know what it's like to be in the battlefield or in the arena. And if I'm like, I need to work for the next 3 days and like write 5 book chapters, like there's not a discussion. It's like, of course, do your thing. There's no like, I can't believe you're like, and to the flip side, in the cheerleader dynamic, a cheerleader who's really rooting for the team doesn't ask the quarterback to come out when the game's on the line. And so I think that a lot of people are running in what they consider to be cheerleader dynamics, but they are inverted dynamics. They're actually sabotaging the game. And I think that it's like in that dynamic, it's harder, in my opinion, to do the cheerleader quarterback, because you have to have a very aligned mission and goals of like the relationship. It's easier to do that in the dynamic that you're working together, because it's so clearly stated with the mission and the goals of like, this is where I want to go, and this is how I want to get there, and like, do you want to come with me? And then you're very much operating on this shared sense of reality. And it also becomes difficult for entrepreneurs, in my opinion, now. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've seen plenty of people get divorces as they get older and whatnot. Is that like, if you're like, all right, this will be interesting. Mm-hmm. So typically, when people become attracted, so Esther Perel, if you've heard of her, she's really interesting, like relationship person. She's like one of the top TED Talks on it. I think it's called Mating Captivity is her book. But in the beginning, you have kind of this mystery because you don't know each other, and that's what creates like the excitement, right? And as you get to know each other over time, you swing like from mystery to familiarity, right? You get a little bit more security, you get to know each other better, and it feels like more and more amazing. And so what you do is you just keep trying to do that, right? But what's happening is that you overcorrect, and then you become siblings. And then it's like, well, that's not good. And so it's not a problem to be solved, but a dichotomy to be managed, right? In terms of like, how much space do you create versus how much familiarity? What happens when people, like entrepreneurs specifically, like have their business and they have the wife, they spend more time in the beginning, and all of a sudden they don't spend as much time together, and then they grow apart because they're also exposed to different stimuli, right? And so you adapt to the stimuli that you have, and you grow apart. On the flip side, if you're in my scenario where we're like doing the same thing together, the downside of this one, these couples make 5 times more money than any of the other versions that I just said. But you can become too familiar, and then you just become siblings. So for us, we actually create more space. So it's like we try to work on separate sides of the house. We don't attend the same meetings. So like at the end of the day, we can sit down at dinner and be like, how was your day? And she can tell me something rather than me saying like, oh, I was there, I know, right?
Yeah.
And so the happiest couples are actually couples that have both have careers that are not necessarily together. So on average, these couples are the ones that, because they have a shared goal in terms of like, this is what we want to do. They have shared values in terms of how they want to get there. And they respect one another, and they respect each other's goals, and then they walk kind of in parallel. So you've got the, like, I'm working the entrepreneur, and then you've got the stay-at-home wife. There's many times everyone's seen that one go wrong. There's the, like, we're both working together in it, so these people have to correct for trying to create more familiarity. These ones have to create more space, so you have the space to be missed. And then these ones tend to be in the middle already, and so they just kind of like have to keep walking. And so for me, it was actually just interesting seeing the different dynamics and like how we had to correct in the beginning. Like we spent all day every day together, and the business was small, so it was like she was there and I was here, and we worked out together and we ate together, and we did that for like 2 years. And I was like, maybe I'll sit on different meetings than you.
Yeah.
But like seeing the level of like commitment and loyalty that you get from that, and I don't know.
So I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I have strong beliefs around that. And I think that you don't have to compromise anything if you don't want to.
Well, I didn't get his respect, so I'm going to have to compensate with my circumstances, with my environment, so that everyone respects me. And some people do that through fear. Some people do that through violence. Some people do that through success. It really just depends what vehicle you choose. But like, I feel like the deep need is the same. Then we gain more leverage over our time, which we then know we will compound into money. Because I think if you can master the time, you master them. I am the person who has done these things, and I will do things that will get me closer to the things that I want to achieve. And so a lot of my definition of self has always been based on evidence. And so I think it was harder for me in the beginning because I didn't have evidence to support what I hoped to be true about myself, which at the time wasn't. And so
what did you hope to be true? That you could figure it out, or was it always a result?
If I can just decrease the action threshold for people to begin and be okay with the fact that they're going to suck, and it is okay to suck. You should expect to suck. And it would be unreasonable for you to be good if you haven't done it before. And so it's like, are you asking the universe to be unreasonable for you by expecting to be good on your first try?
So every time you watch or you consume a piece of content, or you read a book, if you think, what behavior am I going to change as a result of this? If the answer is nothing, you wasted your time and you pretended to be learning, but you were really entertaining yourself. And so that frame has been incredibly helpful for me to speed up how quickly I take action, because I don't want to be a dodo bird. So that's two different ones, learning and intelligence. One that I've been thinking a lot about with Dr. K and I, we go back and forth, is motivation. So I'll tell you a story and then I'll bring it up, I'll bring it around. So I was at an event and a young lady said, "Alex, can you just give me 60 seconds of motivation?" And of course it's like, dance monkey dance. And so I took a deep breath and I was like, define motivation. And she just like melted. She had no idea, right? And I was like, so you want me to answer a question or make a statement about something that you can't even define. And so how would you have any idea of whether or not I actually did it? And so then I probably gave her the answer she really wanted, which was, let me define motivation for you. So motivation is the equal opposite of deprivation. So we are most motivated when we are deprived of something. I'm most motivated to sleep when I'm sleep deprived. I'm most motivated to eat when I'm deprived of food. I'm most motivated to have sex when I haven't had sex in a while. Now, that logic carries for physiological needs. But then when you get into psychological things or intangible constructs, so like, let's think about money. By that same logic, you'd think, oh, poor people should be more motivated because they're deprived of money. But that we don't see that in reality. Many poor people are not that motivated. So it would then follow, and I've seen some incredibly rich people who are wildly hungry for money. And so then it would follow that the deprivation comes from our reference point, because money is intangible. And so it's how much do we perceive our deprivation around money? And so if all of my friends are billionaires and I'm worth $100 million, then I have a $900 million deficit that I have to come up. I'm $900 million poorer than the person who just is at $5,000 a month who wants to make $10,000 a month. I'm more motivated to make money than they are because I'm more deprived of it. And so in thinking about this, I then think, okay, what am I deprived of that motivates me to go get it? And also, when I want to try and judge the behavior of others or predict their behavior, I have to think, what things are they deprived of? Because I'll have a much stronger predictive power than trying to say, how do I motivate this person? Look at what they lack.
It's a much more accurate way to predict the things that people are going to chase after.
Operationalized. What do they do?
So I found this quote from Timothy Leary, and it's really fantastic. I think that you'll like this. Find the others. Admit it, you aren't like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. That the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider. Watching normal people as they go about their automatic existences. For every time you say club passwords like, have a nice day and weather's awful today, eh? You yearn inside to say forbidden things like, tell me something that makes you cry, or what do you think deja vu is for? Face it, you even want to talk to that girl in the elevator. But what if that girl in the elevator and the balding man who walks past your cubicle at work are thinking the same thing? Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on a conversation with a stranger? Everybody carries a piece of the puzzle. Nobody comes into your life by mere coincidence. Trust your instincts, do the unexpected, find the others.
There's many matrix undertones here. I mean, I think we might have covered this on a past podcast, but the idea that many people want to be exceptional, but they're afraid of being an exception, I think is such a, it's wanting an outcome without the requirement that the outcome has. And so we can't do the same thing that everyone else approves of and then somehow get a different outcome that everyone else does. And so I think that's why high agency for me is something that I look for in other people, which is, asking someone, why do you believe what you believe? And we talked about this yesterday, but if you have a belief and you can't explain why you believe it, it's not yours, it's someone else's. And most people walk around parroting other people's words for the vast majority of their lives. And so they basically act as recorders, where they clicked record at one point of their life and then they click play in another time in their life, and they're just clicking record, play, record, play, record, play over and over again. And the reason there's that, in my opinion, that other self that's behind it is because none of those words are yours. And so it makes sense that people feel alone and they feel like they're acting because they never say what they think. And as a result, they also sound like everyone else because they were never themselves to begin with.
To those first 3 lines, admit it, you aren't like them, you're not even close. And it sounds quite sort of self-aggrandizing or kind of narcissistic in a way to, you're considering yourself as being above other people. I don't think it's to do with that. I think it's that so many people curtail themselves and optimize for a mean that may not exist. They're reverting to a mean that's just a figment of everybody's imagination. And the only reason that people coalesce there is because other people think that other people are going to coalesce there. The Keynesian beauty contest?
No.
Same as that, basically.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. So Keynesian beauty contest is people make judgments on not who they think is the most beautiful, but on who they think other people think are the most beautiful, and then knowing that other people know that other people are going to make that decision based on that, you end up with this infinite regress of trying to predict things. This is what's happening with politics, right? It's not about picking the person that you want in your area, it's about making the most tactical pick to ensure that overall, accounting for the other people and what they're going to choose, that the person that you really don't want in power doesn't get the seat in your area, but somebody else in some other area. So when you have this sort of recursive, but it happens socially too. I say the thing that I think that you want to hear, knowing that that I could say the thing that I want, but so what I say is some mediator halfway between what I want to say and what I think you want to hear from me. And it just ends up with people, nobody being themselves and everybody being some weird simulacrum of what they think everybody else wants them to be.
And if we go back to motivation, the question is, what, quote, motivates people to do this or to behave in this way? And so most times it's fear of something, right? And so they're afraid of something in their minds. But when you actually play it out, which is one of my favorite frames in the world, which is, let's take this to the hypothetical extreme, or let's play it out two more plays, 2 more turns. And most times you end up getting way closer to what you really want the moment after the bad thing that you think will happen happens. And so we've discussed that there's so many amazing things that have happened in my life and your life and many people's lives that happened immediately after they get out, they have something bad happen that gets them out of that realm of just barely good enough but not really. And so we have this fear of disrupting the just barely good enough but not really, but you're also already miserable. And so the fear of disrupting your misery feels ridiculous. And so when you think about it like that, right, so when you think about it like that, exactly, the only thing we have to lose is the current misery of mediocrity that we're trudging through every day. And so worst case, you're just also still miserable, but maybe you won't be mediocre anymore because at least you won't be like everyone else. But there's also a possibility that you are not miserable and also not mediocre. And by doing that, you might also just start seeing who you really are, because I think a great portion of our identity comes from the proof that we give ourselves of the things that we've done and said in the past. And so if we want to build towards a different version of ourselves, then it begins with accruing, stacking evidence that aligns with that future self. And so in some ways, break the plate, take the shot, get rejected.
Look,
because when you do that, then again, the worst case is you have a broken plate, but you didn't like that plate to begin with.
It is astounding how many people want to be spectacular in life, but also want to fit in and be normal. Like, by being normal, you are, by definition, aiming for average. Normal people get normal results. Weird people get weird results. You literally can't do what everyone else does and not expect to get what everyone else has. By doing what everyone else does, you guarantee average results.
It's your brother, your mom, your friend, the one comment they're going to say, you've changed. Why are you doing another kick like this? Oh, you're going to try that now. Okay, here we go again. And the thing is that it's not about them being right or wrong. Again, it's about how right and how wrong they could be. And so, for example, let's say you wanted to start a podcast in the past and you did 3 episodes and then you fell off. And then they think, I told you so. Stop with these dreams. Stop with this crazy content stuff. You're never going to become an influencer, or whatever your goal is. Replace influencer with whatever your thing is. The thing is that you are still closer having done 3 than having done 0. And so it's just about directional correctness and realizing that criticizers are more often correct, but when it matters most, incorrect.